Welcome to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, where we are helping people avoid the burdens of preventable disease. By using evidence-based lifestyle tools to unlock each person's intrinsic healing ability, we're going to be supporting healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy individuals. Making your own food and moving every day vigorously can help you gain freedom from health debt. We can prove it. Welcome back to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor. This is episode 27. We're going to be talking about how eating outside the home is not optimal for your health and talk about why that is and some alternatives to that idea. As we enter this, remember that you can contact us anytime. You can write to us. There's an address in the show description. You can text us and you can email us, and that all that information is on our show description. We love to hear from people. In this podcast, we're trying to help develop a world that has less preventable disease. If we can help people make good health care decisions, these are low-tech decisions. These don't require any extra financing. They do require some time because chopping vegetables takes time. But they don't require anything except an attitude that says, I want to be healthier. And so we're going to be working on giving you the kind of information that will allow you to make those decisions. We'd also like more engagement with your medical community. So when you see a doctor, that you are equipped with the kind of questions and thoughts that will help that doctor make better decisions for you. Do you need that blood pressure medicine, or do you need to lose 10 pounds of weight and eat more celery, and that kind of thing? For many of our patients, dining outside the home is a major aspect of their life and a major hurdle, a major struggle to overcome with respect to being really healthy, to achieving optimal health. Because it's tough to eat out a lot and have optimal health, and we'll talk about why that is in a second. And so we're going to talk about some strategies of how to approach this whole thought. Why is eating out an issue? Why isn't eating out at restaurants just as healthy as eating at home? And there's a few reasons. One is hidden calories. So commercially prepared food there has a variety of characteristics that are used to make it taste better. And those three characteristics are primarily salt, sugar, and fat. And that's not necessarily all bad, but it's usually all bad. And it usually leads to somewhere between like 150 to 300 calories a day extra food consumption in people who eat out frequently. And those calories aren't optimal calories. So the extra sugar, fat, and salt that is added within most commercially prepared foods, and this includes fine dining restaurants. This is not only something that applies to fast food places. Those aren't, the fats that you have aren't optimal fats. They're not extra virgin olive oil, and they're not the best calories from carbohydrates, for example. Secondly, they tend to be a lot of highly processed foods, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. Thirdly, it probably is injurious to your microbiome, that important aspect of your intestinal tract that has all these bugs that make all these valuable nutrients that your body needs. And finally, there's an expense issue. If you're eating out a lot, you're spending a lot of money that could be better spent at better food at home. So let's talk about the hidden calories for a second. Almost all commercially prepared foods have hidden fats and starches and sugars. And the starch is an interesting aspect because often they won't be listed as sugars even if you have an ingredients list. But nevertheless, they contribute to your health in the same way as sugar would because they're very rapidly metabolized starches. And they're used in commercially prepared foods for a variety of reasons, including just simply mouthfeel, but also satiety. They taste good. The preservative chemicals that you often see in the ingredients used in restaurant food are also an issue that should be of concern to us. And then finally, there's this tendency for people when they're eating out to simply eat more because of what's in front of them. They might also eat more calories than they need because of sweet drinks. And also those commercially prepared foods are generally lower in fiber. There's less fruits and vegetables, fewer micronutrients, possibly associated with the increased processing involved when you're eating at a commercial food establishment. There's a couple of papers in the show notes that sort of outline why this is. The result is that people who eat out a lot, the more you eat out, the more likely you are to be overweight, the more likely you are to have poor health in a variety of ways. But there are generally ways that are associated with being overweight. So, for example, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, more heart disease would be three of the common examples. When we think about this, there's this concept of ultra-processed foods. So ultra-processed foods are the foods that are processed outside the home using novel methods, industrial methods. And so when we're talking about ultra-processed foods, we're not talking about traditional canning or cheese or butter or spices. We're talking about almost all the other mass-produced foods that have appeared over the last roughly 100 years. And so altered fats, breakfast cereals, these protein hydrolysates that you get in your protein supplements, and so on. And these have a dose relationship to increase cancers, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and total risk of premature death. And this is a very consistent finding in literature throughout the world. It should be concerning to us, partly because it's not being discussed very much. And yet this literature is at least 20 years old. One of the biggest studies in this type is the Nutrisantes study. And this study, in common with the other studies on ultra-processed foods, show a dose relationship. In other words, for every 10% increase in the ultra-processed foods in your diet, there is a significant increase in cancers, heart disease, diabetes, and so on. What's interesting in that data is that those foods that we're talking about, these ultra-processed foods, actually in the current United States environment constitute somewhere probably between 55 and 70% of the diet. In other words, this is not a minor issue. And the only way you can really get around it, we would argue, is by cooking at home. Just quickly, once again, so if we look at, for example, the NOVA classification from the Nutrisantes study, they included in their ultra-processed foods, they included packaged breads and buns, sweet or savory packaged snacks, industrialized confectionery and desserts, sodas and sweetened drinks, meatballs, poultry and fish nuggets, reconstituted meat products, and those that are transformed by using preservatives other than salt, for example, nitrates. Instant noodles and soups, frozen or shelf-stable ready meals, so that what we might loosely call TV dinners, and other nutritional substances not normally used traditionally, such as hydrogenated oils, these food starches, these modified starches, and as I said before, protein isolates, which leads us to have concerns over people who are using protein powders instead of real food to increase their protein intake. And once again, I'd like to remind you that we don't think of traditional processed foods such as canned beans, frozen vegetables, spices, butters, and cheeses as ultra-processed foods. So bear in mind that you can almost use this thing that we might call a pioneer woman test. So if a pioneer woman trotting across the Great Plains or maybe Western France or whatever in the 1880s, if she would recognize the food that you're eating, it's probably fine. So fruits, vegetables, beans, grains, meats, cheeses, butters, those are all traditional foods that people have been eating for a zillion years, so don't worry about those. And one of the things to bear in mind that we touched on earlier is this idea that whole foods cooked at home are also contributed to the microbiome, because the bugs in your intestinal tract, the microbiome, rely upon the foods that you eat. And some of this is cultured foods, such as yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut and kombucha and things like that contribute those bugs. But something else that is often ignored is that all whole foods contribute some degree to your microbiome, and they actually might be the most important contributors. And then, as I'll point out as often as I can, there's the expense. When you make your own food at home, you're spending a lot less money. So when you can, choose to dine in. Choose to cook food at home and eat food at home. We bet you'll digest the food better. You'll typically consume fewer calories. You'll eat healthier food, and you'll spend less money. What's not to like about that sales pitch? The digestive process is kind of interesting because the digestive process is very complex, relatively poorly understood, and it's probably worth considering what is changed when you cook food at home. You're chopping, you're preparing, You're smelling the food being prepared. You're watching the food being prepared. And we're kind of making this up, but we're betting that all contributes to your digestive system doing a better job. Many of you don't want to spend a lot of time preparing food at home. That's understandable. You don't necessarily need to. Homemade fast food is a real thing. So, for example, if you make our chicken thighs in a vegetable, that you may find, our chicken thighs, I'm referring to the chicken thigh recipe that we have in our book, you may find that you would actually have that ready to eat in the same length of time that you would have if you ordered a fast food meal. And you'll have leftovers. A toasted cheese, onion, and tomato sandwich can tame the appetite of the hungriest teenager. It doesn't take too long. And besides, you can make the teenager do most of the work. Scrambled eggs and sautéed vegetable make for a fabulous meal. You can make all kinds of meals that give you generous amounts of leftovers. The soups, the stews. I happen to love frittata. And all these things are all recipes in our book as well. Then there's just the healthy snacks that don't require any preparation at all that are also potentially meal substitutes. So, for example, if I forget to bring lunch to work, I might have a banana and an apple and a couple of handfuls of raw nuts or something along those lines. It might be cheese and an apple. It might be hummus and chopped up broccoli or English cucumber or something like that. All it requires is you having your brain engaged ahead of time so that you have the right ingredients available. And for many of us, we kind of fit a pattern that is kind of similar to the last week's pattern and the pattern before. And so as you think about this, the more you make that pattern be healthy foods, the easier it's going to be for you. My breakfast is generally going to be a couple of eggs sautéed with some vegetable. It could be spinach, it could be arugula, it could be a sliced up tomato, all in the same pan. Or it could be our groat cereal, what we call crackpot cereal, which is 1/3 rye, 1/3 barley, 1/3 oats, all in their whole form. And we cook it overnight in a crock pot, throw in some blueberries, a dab of honey, a handful of walnuts, and it makes it for a fabulous breakfast. And those grains, they're like 80 cents, $1 a pound, and you can feed a lot of a family with a pound of those grains. And so much better for you than a breakfast cereal. All of this involves the other thought, and that is leftovers are one of the keys to easy cooking. So if you make large servings of something, imagine you made a big stew. Your family enjoyed the stew. Then you had leftovers you might freeze or you might have for lunch the next day. And the more you think like that, the easier it is going to be to eat well. So in our book, you'll often see various shortcuts that make use of affordable staples. This does not have to be expensive. And when you're doing that, you can also encourage yourself by remembering that these are foods that are associated with less cancer, less heart disease, less diabetes, less being overweight, and so on. Many of you probably dine out because you're getting together with friends, and we would actually like to have you think about whether you could make dining in your home a social event, so that you have your friends come over to your house and you all make a meal together. People kind of really get a kick out of that, and all you'd have to do is make sure you have the right kinds of utensils and the right foods available, and be able to direct them, because many of your friends probably don't know how to cook. But hey, you're going to be doing them a favor, and they're going to learn. So getting together at your house and cooking together is a great idea. And maybe this might be a good time to learn how to make homemade pizza. They're sucked in with the idea of pizza because they want pizza, and now they're learning how to make it at home, and they're going to save a whole lot of money. What are the barriers to dining at home? It takes planning. You've got to shop ahead. You've got to be in the habit of cooking. You need a few kitchen tools. And as a matter of fact, our recommendations for the basic well-equipped kitchen are in our book. It doesn't take very much, but it does take a good knife, good cutting board, a couple of good pans. And then there's location issues. So maybe you're out watching your kids' sports event or something like that. Maybe you're going for a hike, and you know everybody's going to be hungry. Maybe you have some other social event that you have to go to. Can you bring food with you? Think about having whole fruit, chopped up vegetables as the basis, and then add some kind of protein, cheese, hummus, cold meat, tuna. You can make good sandwiches. Any sandwich you make at home, it's going to be healthier than anything you buy out. You can bring hot drinks in the thermos. We like to use our camping equipment and bring it with us so that we can put on the tailgate a camp stove and make a hot drink. And that really is very, very fun. You can make hot tea, you can make hot chocolate, all kinds of things like that. You can afford to break the rules a little bit under these conditions, as long as it means you're overall doing a better job. Sometimes there's special occasions. It's somebody's birthday, a celebration. In that case, ignore everything I'm saying, all right? Ignore everything I'm saying. Just enjoy yourself. Remember that the human body is designed to be really resilient. Our habitual activities are what do us the most harm, not the special occasions. So remember, make for good habits, and the special occasions are going to be just fine, and you can enjoy them without any guilt at all. But sometimes you run out of resources and you have to dine out. It might be because of travel. It might be because of urgent, unexpected events. Now, the urgent and unexpected events actually is somewhat taken care of if you're a better planner and realize that urgent, unexpected events actually kind of are expected, because this is the real world. But nevertheless, there's going to be times you're going to have to eat out. And the next question is, where do you eat out? And the first thing we think of when we're on the road and under these conditions, which is not all that uncommon for us, many, many times a year, we first of all think about the deli section of the supermarket. You can go there, you can get fruits, you can get cheese, you can get cold meats, you can get hummus. Are any of these perfect? Are any of these as good as you would have at home? Maybe not, but they're pretty good. And many places have like protein platters with have a few slices of cheese, some cold meat. Now it's processed meat; it's not our favorite, but it's a possibility. It might have a boiled egg in there, along with some fruit or vegetables or both. So those kinds of things. But the more you put together yourself, of course, the less you're going to spend. You can travel with a little cutting board, a knife, and paper towel when you're traveling by car. And it's amazing how those three things make eating out a lot easier. So, for example, I can grab a couple of apples, a pound of almonds, a pound of cheese, and we can have a quick meal that we actually can enjoy and fills us up. And as I mentioned, it saves us a whole lot of money. So think of fast food, first of all, as food that you prepare fast on your own. But you have to be prepared. All of this, I'm going to say this over and over again, all of this requires at least a little bit of planning, of a little bit of intellectual involvement. Maybe you're going to go to a fast food place. It might be because of a special occasion. It might be because there's not too many other games in town. And so if you do that, make sure that at the very least you have a fresh fruit or vegetable with that meal. So if you're going to go to a fast food place, make sure you have some apples in the car and you can eat one of those too, or two of those. By having fruit and vegetables with every meal and snack, you really improve your overall nutritional intake. But maybe you're going to go to a restaurant. In that case, first of all, consider whether they have an online menu, and you can do a little sleuthing, a little decision making as to what you're going to eat when you get there. When you're eating out at a restaurant, always try to have a generous, healthy snack before you go. For me, that might be a handful of almonds and a banana. Maybe a piece of cheese, whatever. And that means I'm not as hungry. I'm going to have more discretion when I choose my foods. Then concentrate on the simplest food in the restaurant. Think a protein, think a vegetable. Look at what meats they have. Look at what vegetables they have. Maybe they've got hummus. Who knows what they've got. But look around at their menu. Make some decisions. And remember, you probably really don't need that dessert. And guard against the liquid calories. You know, the cocktails, the alcoholic drinks, the sweet drinks, the sodas. These all contribute generously to the calorie intake. It's very easy for any of those drinks I just mentioned to give you 300 to 500 calories. That number of calories on a daily basis is enough to add a pound a week to your waistline. You don't want that. As you walk into a restaurant, be alert to what other people are eating. Look what looks like it's healthy on the plate. Look at what vegetables they already have in the kitchen. And because you can often ask restaurants to modify what they're serving you based on what they already have. It's no problem for them. And so if I'm going to a restaurant for breakfast, for example, and I look and see what people have on their plate, I might have a couple of eggs medium over, and then whatever vegetables they're putting into their omelets. They're happy, I'm happy, great food. If you have time and it's not very busy, talk to the servers about what they have and what they enjoy and what they think of as being the best foods there. Get them talking. It's kind of fun. And if you must get a dessert, share it. Find out ways to eat less at a restaurant. You can have the servers substitute extra vegetables for breads or other starches like rice or potatoes. Order a small portion, like a lunch portion if you can. You can sometimes use the trick that a lot of people do, and that is have a takeaway box delivered with your meal. Take some of your meal, put it in a takeaway box, and then eat whatever you think is appropriate amount of the meal. You can cut the meal in half. You've got a meal for the next day. What's not to like about that? You can split a plate with a friend. Just as kind of a side issue, I guess, but at breakfast, if you're going to have eggs that have to be recognizable as eggs. So, for example, I always order my eggs easy over rather than scrambled. The reason is scrambled eggs at a restaurant may well come out of a box, highly processed, who knows what's in those things. Whereas an egg that comes out of a shell, it's going to be healthier, and you're going to be able to recognize it because it'll have a yolk. So that's a side issue that's probably relevant. And we don't really understand why people use chemical constructs like the egg substitutes. To us, there's no basis, as far as I'm aware, of thinking that they're healthier than eggs, and they're chemical constructs. What are you thinking if you're ordering egg substitutes? That's what I say. So, in summary, actively plan your life so that you mostly eat food that you cook at home. If you don't think ahead and plan about this, you're not prioritizing your health and your budget. Develop a handful of easy-to-make healthy recipes that you can enjoy making. And once again, at some risk of being self-serving here, our book really is designed around that kind of cooking. Easy recipes, tasty recipes, recipes that will give you leftovers. Remember that good cooking takes practice. None of us were born good cooks. We become good cooks by working at it, just like anything else in life. If you do travel or go to restaurants, then plan ahead and always think about how to have some extra fruit or vegetables in the car, in your pack, whatever, so you can, no matter where you're eating, you can be making sure you're having plenty of fruits and vegetables. And especially if you need to lose weight, have fruit or vegetables before you eat anything else. You're going to be a little bit more full, you'll eat a little bit less. Along these lines, at one of our upcoming podcasts, we're going to be meeting with Karen. She's a home chef, and she works to help people understand how to really make the home dining experience fun, healthy, budgetarily sound, and just plain enjoyable. So thank you for listening. I'm Miles Hassel, internal medicine physician in Portland, Oregon. Our website is greatmed.org. The book is Good Food, Great Medicine. It's now in the 4th edition. And the podcast that you're listening to is Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor. Thank you.